Title: The Power of Rising After Every Fall. What if every setback in your life could be the very thing that propels you to a higher place? What if failure wasn't the end, but a signpost guiding you to success? In every challenge, there's an opportunity. In every fall, there's a rise waiting to happen. It's not the struggles that define us, but how we rise from them that shows who we really are. Life can sometimes feel like a never-ending cycle of challenges. The weight of uncertainty and doubt can feel crushing, making us question our worth. But it is in these very moments when we feel like we are on the edge that the seeds of greatness are planted. Meet Sarah. She was just an ordinary woman with big dreams, but life had a way of throwing roadblocks in her path. She had faced countless failures, lost jobs, broken relationships, and dreams that seemed to slip through her fingers. But one thing Sarah never did was give up. Each setback, each failure became a lesson, a stepping stone towards something greater. At one point, Sarah was at her lowest. Her bank account was empty, her confidence shattered, and she felt like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. But in that moment of despair, she made a choice. She chose to keep going, even when everything inside her screamed to stop. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought within, but it's when we push through the darkest times that we unlock the strength we never knew we had. Sarah's story is just beginning, and so is yours. There were days when Sarah wanted to quit. The doubts crept in, the voices of defeat echoed in her mind, and the temptation to give up was strong. But she remembered something her grandmother once told her: "When life gets tough, you get tougher." She didn't know it then, but those words would become her mantra. Every time she hit a wall, Sarah reminded herself that this too would pass. She would push forward, even when the path was unclear. Each small victory, getting out of bed, taking one step forward, starting something new, became a triumph. Perseverance isn't just about pushing through the easy times. It's about sticking with it when the world tells you to quit. It's about showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it. Sarah learned that success isn't a straight line, but a winding road with plenty of bumps along the way. Her first few attempts at rebuilding her life didn't lead to instant success. She stumbled, failed, and fell down again. But Sarah didn't see these as defeats. She saw them as lessons. With each failure, she grew stronger, and in the end, she would prove that it was never the failures that defined her, but how she rose from them. One day, after months of struggle, Sarah received a call. It was the opportunity she had been waiting for. A chance to start over, a chance to show the world what she was made of. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she knew this was her moment. She didn't have all the answers, and she certainly didn't have the perfect plan. But she had something even more valuable: the willingness to take that first step. Sarah took a leap of faith, trusting that if she kept moving forward, the universe would meet her halfway. The fear was still there, the doubt still lingered. But Sarah didn't let it control her anymore. She had learned that fear was just another part of the journey. It didn't mean she was weak. It meant she was human. And being human meant she could rise above it. That first step led to many more, and before long, Sarah found herself on a path she never thought was possible. The struggles that once seemed insurmountable now felt like distant memories. And it all started with a choice to rise, no matter how many times she had fallen before. As Sarah continued on her journey, she encountered more challenges, but they no longer held the same power over her. Each obstacle became a puzzle she was eager to solve. She had learned to embrace the struggle, and knowing that every difficulty she faced would make her stronger. Her confidence grew, and so did her resilience. Sarah became someone who didn't just survive the challenges life threw at her, she thrived in them. Her journey was no longer about avoiding failure, but about using every setback as fuel to propel herself forward. She realized that success wasn't a destination. It was a journey. And this journey wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about continuously evolving, learning, and growing. The road was still long, and there were many unknowns ahead. But Sarah had something she didn't have before: belief in herself. And that belief was all she needed to keep going. As Sarah's life began to transform, so did her perspective. She stopped seeing herself as a victim of her circumstances and started seeing herself as the creator of her future. Every hardship, every loss, every moment of despair had shaped her into the strong, determined woman she had become. She realized that the greatest power lies within us all, the power to rise no matter how many times we fall. It wasn't about being invincible. It was about being unbreakable. It was about believing in yourself even when no one else did. And just like Sarah, you too have the power to rise. No matter what life has thrown your way, you have within you the strength to overcome it. Your past does not define you, your future does. Rise above your struggles, embrace your strength, and trust that the best is yet to come. Sarah's life had transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. The woman who once felt helpless and defeated now stood tall, with her head held high. She had built a life from the ashes of her past, and every step she took was a testament to her resilience. But transformation wasn't easy. It required vulnerability, sacrifice, and above all, the courage to be herself. In her quest for success, Sarah had learned that true change comes from within. It's not about changing the world around you, but about changing how you see the world and how you see yourself. Sarah had learned to embrace her flaws, her imperfections, and her mistakes. She no longer saw them as weaknesses, but as the very things that made her strong. She had become comfortable with her scars, for they were proof that she had lived, fought, and survived. The transformation wasn't just about achieving external success. It was about finding peace within herself. Sarah no longer sought validation from others. She had learned to trust her own worth, knowing that her value wasn't defined by anyone else's opinion. Success, Sarah realized, wasn't about the accolades or the recognition. It wasn't about the money or the status. The true measure of success was in the person you become along the way. She had seen people who had it all, the money, the fame, the success, yet still felt empty inside. They were constantly chasing after something more, never feeling truly fulfilled. And then there was Sarah. She didn't have it all, but she had peace. She had purpose. She had a life built on resilience, not on perfection. She realized that the real treasure was not in what she had gained, but in who she had become. Success was about becoming the person who could handle whatever life threw at her with grace, strength, and unwavering belief in her own potential. As Sarah's life changed, so did the lives of those around her. People began to notice her transformation. They saw the strength, the determination, and the calm confidence that now radiated from her. Her story became a source of inspiration, showing others that change was possible, no matter how hopeless things seemed. Sarah didn't set out to be an inspiration. She simply focused on her own journey. But by choosing to rise, she had created a ripple effect that touched the lives of countless others. Her story became a beacon of hope, showing others that they, too, had the power to change their lives. The most beautiful thing about Sarah's journey was that she didn't need to seek fame or recognition. By being true to herself and staying committed to her path, she became a symbol of what was possible when you refused to give up. As Sarah's life flourished, she realized that true fulfillment wasn't just about achieving personal success. It was about using your success to help others. She knew that the struggles she had faced weren't just for her benefit. They were lessons to be shared. Sarah began mentoring others who were struggling, offering them the same guidance and encouragement that had helped her along her journey. She saw herself in their eyes, the fear, the uncertainty, the longing for change, and she knew exactly what they needed to hear. Giving back was her way of paying forward the lessons she had learned. She no longer saw her success as something to hoard, but something to share. Her life had been transformed, and now it was her turn to help others find their own transformation. Sarah had learned the ultimate truth. Life is not about avoiding pain or hardship. It's about how you respond to it. The true measure of your strength lies not in how many times you succeed, but in how many times you rise after falling. She had faced failure, heartbreak, and loss, But none of those things had defeated her. In fact, they had shaped her into the woman she was today. And Sarah knew one thing for certain: as long as she kept rising, there would always be hope. There would always be a way forward. Sarah's journey wasn't unique. Every single one of us faces challenges. Every single one of us has fallen at some point. But it is not our failures that define us. It is our ability to rise time and time again, no matter how many times we fall. So, rise. Embrace your journey with all its ups and downs. For in the end, it is not the destination that matters, but the strength and resilience you discover within yourself along the way. The final step in Sarah's journey wasn't about achieving any more external success. It was about becoming the person she had always been meant to be, a person who no longer feared the struggle, but embraced it. She had found peace, not in perfection, but in the pursuit of growth. Sarah understood that life was a series of steps, each one leading to a higher version of herself. And she had learned to trust the process, knowing that with every challenge, she was becoming stronger, wiser, and more resilient. As she looked back at her journey, Sarah realized that everything she had been through, every moment of doubt, every tear, every fall, had been necessary. They were the building blocks of her success. And now, standing tall in the life she had built, Sarah knew that she could face whatever came next with the same strength and courage that had carried her this far. Now it's your turn. No matter where you are in life, no matter what challenges you face, remember that you too have the power to rise. Your story is not defined by the setbacks you faced, but by the strength you summon to move forward. Embrace your struggles, because they are the very things that will shape you into the person you were always meant to be. Keep rising, keep pushing, and remember that every fall is simply a lesson in disguise. The power to rise is within you. It's time to take that first step. As Sarah continued her journey, she realized that every new chapter was an opportunity to redefine herself. Each challenge that appeared in her life wasn't a setback. It was simply a new beginning. There was no such thing as failure anymore, only growth and transformation. Sarah began to look at life through a different lens. She no longer feared the unknown, because she knew that it was only through embracing uncertainty that she could unlock her greatest potential. The unknown became a canvas for her to paint her dreams and goals. And every time she stepped into that unknown, she did so with the confidence that she had already conquered so much. Every door that had closed in the past opened up a new one, a better one. The lessons from her struggles became the foundation of her success. And now she could see how every twist in the road had led her exactly where she needed to be. Sarah had once believed that vulnerability was a sign of weakness. She thought that being strong meant never showing any signs of pain or doubt. But as she continued to grow, she discovered something beautiful. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a strength. It was in her moments of vulnerability that she found true connection with others. She realized that when she opened her heart and shared her struggles, others felt empowered to do the same. Sarah stopped hiding behind a facade of perfection. Instead, she embraced her authentic self, flaws and all. She understood now that true strength lies in being able to stand tall despite the odds, but also in allowing others to see the real, raw version of you. When you embrace your vulnerabilities, you give others the courage to do the same. Sarah's vulnerability didn't make her weak. It made her relatable. It made her real, and it made her a force of nature. With her newfound perspective, Sarah was no longer chasing after fleeting goals. She was building a life she truly deserved, a life filled with purpose, passion, and fulfillment. She stopped focusing on the things she didn't have and started appreciating everything she had. Sarah realized that happiness wasn't something you could chase. It was something you cultivated from within. It wasn't about acquiring more or achieving higher status. It was about living authentically, aligning your actions with your values, and making every day count. The life she had always dreamed of was no longer out of reach. It wasn't something that existed in the future, but something she had the power to create right now. With every choice she made, every decision she took, Sarah was building the foundation of a life she could be proud of, a life she truly deserved. One of the most powerful tools Sarah had discovered on her journey was gratitude. She had spent years focusing on what was missing, but now she saw the importance of acknowledging all the things she already had. Gratitude shifted her focus from lack to abundance, from struggle to strength. Each morning, Sarah took a moment to reflect on the things she was grateful for, the small things, the big things, the everyday miracles that had always been there, but had often gone unnoticed. Gratitude became a daily practice, one that fueled her positivity and deepened her connection with the world around her. By cultivating gratitude, Sarah had unlocked an endless source of joy. She no longer needed external validation to feel good about herself. She had learned to find contentment in the present moment, regardless of her circumstances. Change had always been a source of fear for Sarah, but now she saw it as an opportunity for growth. She realized that in order to evolve, she had to be willing to let go of the old and welcome the new. Change wasn't something to be afraid of. It was the very thing that would push her to become a better version of herself. Sarah had spent years resisting change, holding on to what was familiar, even when it no longer served her. But now, she had learned that change was the key to unlocking her potential. With every new challenge, Sarah felt herself becoming more adaptable, more resilient, and more capable of handling whatever came her way. She no longer feared change, she embraced it. Because she knew that each time she allowed herself to grow, she was stepping closer to the person she was meant to be. Sarah knew now that the most fulfilling life was a life of purpose. It wasn't enough to just survive, she wanted to thrive. And thriving meant living with intention, aligning her actions with her core values, and striving for something greater than herself. Every day, Sarah woke up with a sense of purpose. She no longer felt like she was simply going through the motions. Every decision, every interaction, every action was made with a deep sense of meaning. Sarah had found her calling, and it wasn't about a career or a title. It was about making a positive impact, inspiring others to rise, and living a life that left a legacy. A life of purpose wasn't easy, but it was worth it. And Sarah was living proof that when you live with purpose, you create a life filled with joy, meaning, and fulfillment. Through everything Sarah had been through, one trait stood out above the rest: resilience. Resilience wasn't about never falling, it was about having the strength to get back up every time you did. It was about finding hope, even in the darkest moments, and holding on to the belief that everything would be okay. Sarah had learned that resilience was the key to overcoming any obstacle. It wasn't about avoiding difficulties. It was about facing them head on, knowing that they were temporary and that better days were ahead. Each time Sarah fell, she got back up stronger. She had built resilience in the most difficult moments, and it had become her superpower. Resilience was what allowed Sarah to keep going when others gave up. It was what fueled her journey, giving her the strength to keep fighting, keep rising, and keep believing. Despite all the growth Sarah had experienced, life had one final test for her. This test wasn't about success or failure. It was about how she would handle the greatest challenge of all, finding peace within herself. Sarah had spent so much time focusing on the external, on achieving her goals, overcoming obstacles, and becoming a better person. But now, she had to face the most important challenge of all: acceptance. It was time to accept that everything she had been through, everything she had fought for, was enough. She didn't need to prove herself anymore. She was enough just as she was. In that moment of acceptance, Sarah found the peace she had been searching for all along. And she knew that, no matter what life brought her way, she would always be enough. Sarah's journey was far from over. She had grown, she had learned, and she had transformed. But there was one more lesson she needed to embrace: the power of letting go. Letting go of the past, of old wounds, of grudges and guilt. For so long, Sarah had held on to the pain of her past. She had let it define her, shape her, and weigh her down. But now she understood that in order to move forward, She had to release that burden. Letting go wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about choosing to no longer let it control her future. She began to forgive herself for her mistakes and to forgive others for their wrongs. With every act of forgiveness, Sarah felt lighter, freer. It was as if the chains that had held her down for so long had finally been broken. Sarah realized that the only way to truly live was to let go of everything that no longer served her. The past, the pain, the fears, they no longer had a hold on her. She was free. As Sarah moved forward in her journey, she found that true success wasn't just about achieving external goals. It was about finding balance in all areas of her life. She realized that while her career, her goals, and her achievements were important, so was her health, her relationships, and her inner peace. She couldn't pour from an empty cup. Sarah began to prioritize self-care, taking time for herself and learning to say no when needed. She didn't have to do everything, and she didn't have to please everyone. She learned to set boundaries, to protect her energy, and to focus on what truly mattered. Finding balance wasn't easy, but it was essential. Sarah learned that when she found balance in her life, everything else fell into place. She was more focused, more productive, and more fulfilled. Balance wasn't a destination. It was a way of living. Even after all Sarah had achieved, she realized that her journey was far from over. There were still dreams to chase, new heights to reach, and bigger goals to accomplish. Sarah had learned that the key to growth was to never stop dreaming. Even when you've come so far, it's important to continue aiming higher. She wasn't afraid to dream bigger anymore. She had broken through so many of her old limitations and fears. Now, there were no more boundaries. She was ready to push past any obstacle, to continue growing, evolving, and dreaming. Sarah's dreams were no longer confined by what she thought was possible. She understood that when you've already conquered the impossible, there's nothing stopping you from achieving even greater things. As Sarah's life evolved, she learned the importance of living authentically. She no longer tried to fit into anyone's mold or meet anyone's expectations. She had spent so many years trying to live up to the standards others had set for her. But now she was free from that. She was finally living for herself. Living authentically meant showing up in the world as the real, unfiltered version of herself. She embraced her quirks, her flaws, her uniqueness. She didn't hide who she was or apologize for it. Sarah realized that the key to happiness was not in becoming someone else, but in becoming the best version of herself. She didn't need anyone's approval, only her own. And that was the most powerful realization of all. As Sarah reflected on everything she had been through, she felt immense gratitude for the person she had become. The road wasn't always easy, and the journey was far from perfect. But every step had been worth it. Every struggle had shaped her, and every victory had made her stronger. Now, it's your turn to begin your journey. No matter where you are, no matter what obstacles you face, remember that you have the power to rise. You have the strength to overcome, the courage to keep going, and the wisdom to keep learning. Embrace the challenges, learn from the struggles, and above all, never stop believing in yourself. If you found this story inspiring, give it a like and come back for more motivational videos to keep you on your journey. You've got this. Keep rising because your best self is waiting for you.